Welcome to the first session. This is the first article that I wrote in this series that I'll be reading to you now. If you don't know what this is all about, you can go watch the previous video just to give you a bit of a preamble about why I'm doing this. But for now, let's get straight into it. This is the Cyclic Burnout Routine. Oh God, here we go again. Dean is losing the plot again. Luckily, this only comes around every 5 years, it seems. Like the Halley's Comet of bad moods, I will descend into my dark space for a while. The usually very happy-go-lucky optimist that I am cannot suppress his anger and has brief outbursts at the people that least deserve it. I get very moody, despondent, I get defensive, and I just generally lack the energy and focus to work properly. At its peak, there are several emotional blowouts, emotional breaks, and I end up doing that silly sobbing thing that you see toddlers do when they don't get the ice cream they want. You can hardly call that crying. Right now, I'm 34 years old, and my adulting life started just over 1.5 decades ago. It was in this time that I've experienced severe burnout 3 times already. Perhaps it's coincidence, but it seems to just rear its ugly head every 5 years. This is what I call my cyclic burnout routine, and it's pretty much very exhausting for me and for everybody around me. By the way, I'm actually due to blow out now again. So it's been 5 years since the last one. There are many different types of burnout. Most people relate burnout to the action of working too much, burning the candle at both ends, as one says. I definitely also do that. My burnout is a little bit more complicated though than just working too much. I would say that I suffer from something closer to emotional burnout, which is a cocktail of emotional suppression, misdirected energy, and a string of what appear to be harmless little lies. These are the major symptoms that go unnoticed for roughly 5 years at a time before I reach a melting point and then I just pop. Although my dark times are the cause for much discomfort, they seem to offer me relief from dealing with more common and unpleasant things. I don't have to deal with confrontation, for example. I hate confrontation. And the cyclic burnout routine allows me to sustain my insatiable need to people please without regular concern of it. This system is also be the reason that I'm always content and grateful for my awesome life all the time. So that can't be that bad, right? If every year if every 5 years I just, take it on the chin and I have this blowout, this little moaning myrtle session that lasts a little while, but then it passes and I get back on a happy bicycle for 5 years, that really can't be so bad, right? Let's look at round 1. An alcoholic in the making. The first time I lost the plot, I was about 24 years old. My burnout didn't last that long, but it involved some very scary jerk reactions back to reality. I was an enthusiastic, budding entrepreneur, always working on a new project that just so happened to fail. But while I was also doing a money job, usually that I hated, at the same time. But I also attended a lot of parties that led to a lot of terrible hangovers from overdoing it way too much. But like many a young millennial white male born into a good middle-class family, I took my liberties and opportunities for granted, and I plowed my healthy and youthful body into debauchery. I figured that real responsibility would come later. I had time, and this was my right. It was my right now to live free and be a rebel. I came to experience burnout from my lifestyle choices rather than working too much. Excessive drinking seemed to be such a normal cultural thing that even a car accident and a severe laceration to my hand and my wrist were from falling over with a bottle, that's what that came from, were not enough to stop me. It's scary. And at my turning point, after the episodes of guilt, of, oh, what did I have done, became so unbearable, then I chose to attend some AA meetings to get some much needed perspective. And not but a few weeks after my little meltdown, I was okay again. Round 2, quarter life crisis. The second time I bummed out was way more serious than that. At 29, exactly 5 years later, I had what resembled, in my mind, an early midlife crisis. A series of unfortunate events confronted me, including an ugly fallout with an old friend over a business project, and also the sudden suicide of my cousin. Drinking made its usual debut, and it accompanied other narcotics this time. As with round 1, I do not want to go into the details of all of that in this article, as there will be time for that later. But what is important to know right now is that this period of emotional burnout lasted almost a year. I was miserably unhappy for an entire year. Inside, I wasn't showing that. And never knowing when my next anger-fueled explosion would surface made it unbearable to live with me throughout this time. I refused help. It was almost as if I wanted to feel angry. A pitiful dog that was feeling sorry for itself. My fiancée at the time, she's my wife now, was forced to give me an ultimatum at one point. And if I wanted to continue our relationship, I had to change. And that was great. Just what I needed from her. More drama in my life. It seemed like things were just going to get worse and worse and worse. But eventually, like a phoenix, I rose out of the ashes of this too, and I got back into gear for a couple of years. Happy-go-lucky Dean was back. Anger? What's that again? Pack it away. Round 3. It is imminent. When the coronavirus first hit, I was doing pretty well still. I had income and a large support net around me. I was looking better than most people around me, most of my friends who were losing jobs. Sure, it stressed me out that there was so much uncertainty in the world, but I noticed something deeper inside me was not 100% okay. After a sudden unplanned excessive amount of whiskey, a few times, but this particular occasion, I launched myself headfirst into a tantrum. The writing was on the wall. This was the early warning signs that I was heading for another round of meltdown. I didn't know if it would be worse than the previous one, an escalating build-up. But this episode I knew was only the beginning. There were obvious signs that I could now see from the previous experience, and the sudden uncontrolled drinking and the pity party, and worst of all, the anger were the main and obvious ones. It only dawned on me the day after my outburst that it was once again 5 years from my last cataclysm. Until this time, I had not seen the pattern. This was when I started to notice the cyclicness of my burnout routine. I'm writing this article 1 week and 2 days after that outburst. By now, the people that know me don't panic about it as much because I have that reputation of, oh, don't worry, this phase will pass. It'll come, it'll go, and he'll be fine again. But I also know that each time after it passes, I do also feel better than before. I get a vibrant, renewed energy and good focus. But things are different this time. In the last few months, I've learned too much about myself to plead ignorance for yet another 5 years ahead of me. If I dive back into my usual emotional suppression, misdirected energy, and that string of what appear to be harmless little lies, if I repeat all of that, it will not get better for me in the future. Each time, the scars of the burnout run a little deeper, and they have a worse effect on my chances of escaping this. By 39, maybe I won't be taking it so lightly as I am now. Will I also have more responsibility and more to lose by then? I'm pretty sure I do, or at least I hope I will. My problem avoidance tendencies, sort of avoiding them, make me a prime candidate for alcoholism, which shows its head, especially around these times. I've already cut out a lot of shit in my life, and I really am proud of myself for that. But I'm still failing in ways that affect me deeply. And I can't ignore these things anymore. Not now that I know that there is this pattern with increasing severity. I need to I want to face my problems and my fears. I truly want this. I reached a point where I wanted this. And this article that you are reading or listening to right now is the start of my journey to the end of my cyclic burnout routine once and for all. Break the fucking pattern. I must admit, when I wrote that and now reading it out again, it feels good to say it, and I know I've been doing it, so this is awesome. But to be clear, the goal here is not to look or feel good. That really is important to understand, that feeling good is the thing that I've been hiding behind in my past. So in this blog, or in this series, I'm going to share very key events in my past where necessary, and where I am at in the present at the time of writing this, and in the future. What are my options to break free from my two worst enemies, being confrontation avoidance and people pleasing? So I will share my experiments, my experiences, the books that I've been reading, the information from people that I've taken advice from, and I will commit to writing videos every day, which I did then, and I'll commit right now to reading out a story like this every day for the next 30 days. So I encourage you to come along for the ride, because it is a bumpy one. I do want to make this note at the start of this video that I am not a doctor, I'm not a physician, I'm not a psychologist or a trained life coach. I'm just a guy trying to figure it all out. And this blog and this writing has served as my journal to self-improvement. And I hope that if it proves itself successful, which it seems to be doing, that it may help other people in a similar position to me, where I am or where I was, overcome their challenges with severe burnout too. The next post that I'll be reading is called Fake It Till You Make It. You'll see that one tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Yeah. Whew.